And I think the last question here, hopefully is we can get through it in these last 4 minutes, is from Blood for the Blood God. And they ask, hello, how do I cope with not being able to reach perfection? They said that they know 2 languages, Spanish and English, and despite having used both for a long time, they end up confused by words they haven't seen before, and feel bad about calling themselves bilingual because they don't know the languages to 100%. They know it's silly, but this idea has been stuck in their head for a lot of time, for many years. They fear that the more languages they want to learn in the future, this gap between proficiency and perfection will just widen and slowly add up to the point where they barely know anything in a language.
A friend of mine said something to me a few months ago. He said, the price of perfection is infinite. Meaning you can never reach perfection no matter how much effort you put in, which means in order to reach it, you have to put in an infinite amount of effort. Mm-hmm. And that is true in a target language. That is true in your native language too. So there are still words that you do not know in English. English, I think, has 70,000 words.
Way more.
The average more, 170,000. I don't know.
Several dictionaries have 500,000 words in them or something.
Sure.
In
so
Spanish,
average native speaker
600,000, 700,000. It's insane.
Yeah. So native speakers know 20 to 30,000, and that's good enough. So one of the things that I've noticed in my Spanish is that as my Spanish has improved, I was holding myself to this sort of perfection standard for a long time. And at some point I realized that I also couldn't hear things in English. So I would be standing on a train platform and it's super loud and terrible acoustics. And I would hear 2 people speaking Spanish and I'm like, I can't understand them. I'm not good enough yet. And then I would, turn my head and hear 2 people speaking in English. And I'm like, I can't understand them either.
Your friend right next to you would say something and you go, sorry, what was that?
Yeah, exactly. So when I realized that my English ability was actually substantially lower than I thought it was, I thought it was a much very high, close to perfect. And when I had reached a high enough level in Spanish, I realized that my English ability was actually much lower, much poorer than I expected, than I had realized. And once I understood that, I realized that perfection was not a good goal, that I was being too hard on myself with Spanish, and that I had achieved a pretty significant level. But what was more important is really understanding what is your goal? Because if you're setting a goal of I want to be perfect, there's literally never been a perfect language speaker in all of human history. So you're setting a completely unreasonable goal at that point. But there is something that's important to you. For me personally, what is important to me is I want to be able to speak Spanish like a college-educated native speaker. So that is the level of discourse that I want to be able to have in Spanish casually in conversation. So debates, essays, giving lectures, giving a TED Talk, whatever it is. That is the level that I want. Further than
college-educated.
Yeah. So that is the level that I want. And there's a relatively objective criteria for that. Can I express my ideas in the language? Will I be perfect? No. I'm still going to phrase things wrong. I'm still going to do transfers from English to Spanish. There's always going to be small things that are challenging. But if I can do that, that is that checks the box for me in terms of me achieving the level that I want in the language. So I think it's really important for you to understand what is your actual goal. What are you trying to achieve? Because perfection is not an achievable goal. There's no point in aiming for it.
I think a good almost gut check as well is to listen carefully to your native language and listen to how people make frequent mistakes. They mispronounce things, they go back on their sentences, they add words that don't really make sense, they forget the definition of words, and realize that you're like that too. If you can, look at your own writing and go, what was I saying there? Right? All these sorts of things are very, very common and are a big part of being a natural user of a language, and sort of reminding yourself that it's okay and that there's a difference between this ideal perfection versus like being very comfortable and using a language naturally and having it be a way that you can express your thoughts and ideas and understand the thoughts and ideas of other people is really the main goal of fluency, right? So yeah, just a little bit of a gut check and realize that you shouldn't be perfect in your target language. That would be putting way too much pressure on yourself for something that is basically impossible. It is impossible.